It is a tradition for many on Victoria Day weekend. You head to the beer store to stock up for your long weekend at the cottage. But lately, there have been renewed efforts to open up beer sales away from the glare of those orange and white lights. Should Ontarians be able to buy beer from other retailers? Joining us now to help answer that, in Peterborough, Ontario, via Skype, Rosanna Pellizzari. She is the Medical Officer of Health for Peterborough County City Health Unit. And with us here in studio, Jeff Newton. He's president of Canada's National Brewers, which owns the beer store. Dave Bryans. He is the CEO of the Ontario Convenience Stores Association. And we welcome back Martin Redcon from the Toronto Star. Good to have everybody around the table. And Rosanna, good to have you on the line from Peterborough. Martin, I'm going to go to you first on this because I'm tempted to say the answer to the question we left at the end of that intro is because you've written so much about this lately. But humor me, why have we apparently been talking about this issue for so long and so intensely lately, opening up the beer sales?
Well, I think Tim Hudak from the Progressive Conservative Party led us to believe that he was serious about liberalizing the sale of beer in this province and opening up what he described as choice, as a conservative, as a Tory. Liberalizing the beer store, liberalizing beer sales, by the way, does not mean privatizing the beer store, because as we've said, it's actually already privately held. So I think with the expectation coming, I think the beer store in particular was expecting this to happen, and they launched an advertising campaign that got a fair bit of attention that basically went on the attack, if I can call it that, against convenience stores and said, here's the peril of allowing corner stores to sell beer or other alcohol. You will have underage drinking sales. And that, I think, had a bit of a backlash.
Okay, let's go around our literal and metaphorical table here and just get everybody to state their positions, and then we'll go on from there. Dr. Pellizzari, let me start with you. Yes or no to more liberalizing of the sale of beer beyond the beer store?
Well, I'm shaking my head. No, definitely not. I guess we've looked at the evidence, and we know that the best way to control consumption and reduce harm is to, use taxation as a way to regulate demand, to control access, and then also to restrict advertising. So controlling access works. And we have lots of examples, both here in Canada and globally, where privatization or increasing the density of outlets where alcohol can be purchased both on-premise and off-premise leads to increased harms from alcohol, increased consumption, increased violence, crime activity, suicides, injuries, you name it.
Okay, let's go to Dave Bryans. You're here representing convenience stores. What's your position?
Definitely, yes. We know that Ontarians want to be treated like millions of other Canadians, where they have access to, 12 cold beers on a hot summer day, or a bottle of wine if company drops over Sunday night for dinner. So we think it's time to open the market and make it more accessible to everybody. And I think, a mature society as Ontario has become today, our customers are telling us that it's time that they want to be treated as mature voters in Ontario and mature customers.
Jeff Newton, you're here representing Orange and White.
Yep.
Okay, what's your position?
Steve, we think we've got a great system. We're very proud of it. We're proud of the work that our 7,000 employees do across the province. It's a unique system, no doubt, but it's a system that is unique in the sense that it's completely open. While people call it a monopoly, it is not a monopoly. It is more of a beer commons in the sense that every brewer is allowed to get into the system, be it a small brewer, a large brewer, and regardless of whether you're a small craft brewer from another country, you can be in our system and pick the stores you want to put your products in and put in as many products to as many stores as you want. And when you're in there, you're allowed to set your own price. So that creates a very competitive environment. Our prices are actually down 11% over the last decade. So the big question here...
Is that relative to inflation or
adjusted to inflation over the last 10 years, you pay less today, 11% less than you did in 2003. That's a result of the efficiencies of that system. So the big question as we see it is if you want to change that system and you want to go to a system of corner and gas station retailing, you're going to proliferate the number of outlets that are selling. You're going to have 10, 15,000 outlets that are going to sell alcohol in this province, and the cost of retailing is going to go up. The cost of distribution of getting beer from a brewery into the hands of a consumer is going to go up. All of those costs are going to pass through into the price of beer, and that will go up, and there will be consequences, as you mentioned, related to responsible sale. We know from other jurisdictions
let's go hold off responsibility of sale somewhat. If people are prepared to pay more for the added convenience, what's wrong with that?
Well, Stephen, we see that people aren't. right? I mean, there was a recent forum poll that came out on the 7th of April that was done for Jordan St. John. It was an independent poll. They went out and asked the public, do you support this idea of corner store sales of liquor? And the response to that was split, 50-50, pretty much. But when you ask people, would you support paying more for the convenience, right? 70% of people said, I don't want to pay more. So when people start to understand the implications, and there are consequences of change, that's our point. This is not consequence-free. And one of the consequences is higher price. And when people know that they'd have to pay more, they say no, they reject the idea.
Let me get over here to Martin. You've heard the arguments. Where are you?
I almost had to reach for a drink after I heard that. My glass of water just to fortify me. Look, we have Jeff here and Dave representing the convenience stores and the beer store, and I forget what you called it, corner stores and gas station outlets. I'm here representing the supermarkets and the Costcos of this province. People shouldn't get caught up in this idea of beer in corner stores. That's a small part of the equation. I don't fault the corner stores for trying to push for this because it would help their industry. It would bring people in the stores. It would help sales. And they have shown already that they can do it responsibly with tobacco. There's no great outbreak to the extent that kids are smoking tobacco, it's because of contraband and they're getting it from other people. So when we talk about corner stores, I'm talking about Costco, Loblaws, Metro, responsible retailers, unionized workforces in those cases, in the case of the supermarkets. And when Jeff talks about we're not a monopoly, okay, technically it's a duopoly because although they have 80% of the market, the LCBO has about 20%, but they're capped. There's an agreement where the LCBO cannot sell 2-4s, cases of 24 or 12, even 8. They can only do 6-packs. It's true that the beer store doesn't set the price of beer. That's dictated by the actual brewers. But there is no retail competition. That's a monopoly or duopoly if you want to worry about that 20%. What I think people are interested in is a competitive retail experience. It might actually benefit the beer store because it would raise their game.
He says they've got polls saying not that many people are in favor of it if it costs more money.
I've never argued for price as the reason to liberalize beer. I don't know that if people, as you said, if prices go up in convenience stores, well, you can go to Costco. I've never heard people say that prices are too high in Costco. It's true, I'm not really representing them, but let's face it, supermarkets are some of the most efficient retailers in the world. They have very low margins, they do what they do well. Convenience stores charge a premium for convenience. So you don't go to buy large quantities of cooking oil in a convenience store, you go and get it when you need it on short notice. If you want large quantities, you go to Costco or Loblaws.
Let me get Dr. Pellizzari on this angle of the story, and that is, do you feel any discomfort about advancing a position, which is essentially don't liberalize sales any further, which actually is the same position that the beer stores have, and there are plenty of people who criticize the status quo? Any queasy feelings about that?
Well, no, I mean, I'm using the evidence. I'm looking at the evidence and I'm taking my position based on what the research shows. And as I said earlier, there's very strong evidence to show that increasing access to alcohol, beer or wine, by increasing retail outlets, increasing the hours of operation, the days that these outlets are open, all of that leads to increased consumption. It's pretty simple. And we have, as I said, we have examples across Canada, and we should be concerned. We have lots of reasons to be concerned. Canada has one of the highest rates of adolescents who are binging. About 30% of our youth, they're all underage, but yet 30% are binging. And here in Peterborough, it's even worse. We did a survey in our schools, 80% of underage high school students were drinking, 80%, and of those, 44% had binged 1 to 3 times in the last month. So Canada has the highest alcohol consumption per capita in North America, and our rates of youth binge drinking rival those of Eastern Europe. So, why would I want more access? It's already bad.
Let me get to Dave Bryans on that. You have heard there is irrefutable evidence that if you liberalize sales, there'll be more access to booze, particularly by those who are not responsible users of booze. So make the argument that we should have
Okay,
more
well,
access.
Let me answer a couple of the statements that made. First off, we're not advocating putting beer in, as Mr. Newton says, 10 to 15,000 stores. We're advocating. We already have 216 stores in Ontario that sell full alcohol under the LCBO agency model. We do it very responsibly. We don't see any issues in those communities compared to any other community in this province. No one's hair has gone on fire because there's an agency store in a small rural town. Secondly,
Should you just explain what for people who haven't been to rural Ontario or who don't know what an agency store is? Just
an
take 30
agency
seconds
store
to
is a
explain.
convenience store that has the rights to sell beer products from the beer stores and from the LCBO. We're their agents. We supply the capital, we build the site, we pay the employees, we take back all recyclables. Remember, in the LCBO agency model, it's the only LCBO store that takes back recyclables, and we're fully into the recyclable business as well. But keep in mind, we're not saying 10,000 stores. When we started lottery in 1976, we put it in 800 stores, and today, through certification, training, alcohol and gaming oversight, we now have it in 9,500 stores.
If you're not talking 10,000 stores, what are you talking?
Well, we don't have a number. We have to sit and say, how do we expand the agency model? Is there a better model that we could work? Should we move the agency model into urban communities? And if Mr. Newton's concerned about price, then why does he want to compete with us? So he's basically saying no one would come to a convenience store, so let's open the market and see where people shop with their wallets.
Let's get Martin and then John. Then Jeff.
I think if you follow Rosanna's logic, then, and I think it's an arguable case, I think she feels strongly about the research, then the government should take over the beer store. It should be a government-controlled monopoly. But for now, the beer store is actually expanding its outlets, expanding its retail sales. I actually don't think that nationalization is the way to go. I don't think there's any political will for that. I think it's much more politically practical to just allow people to have free access. I think you used the word, Rosanna, privatizing the beer store. It's already privately held. That's the point. That's why there's this bizarre anomaly of allowing private brewers to be our custodians of social mores and so on. Let's remember that the owners of the beer store are the three big brewers. These are the same people, these brewers, they're not bad people, but they're the same people who sell beer to convenience stores and supermarkets in Quebec across the border. If it's so bad, why are the beer store's owners doing it in Quebec? It doesn't make sense. It's a contradiction.
You want to speak to that?
Well, yeah, absolutely, Steve. I mean, I think Rosanna's on the right track here in the sense that we need to start looking at the facts. And as I said earlier, this type of change is not consequence-free. I mean, you look at the facts that Rosanna talked about related to responsible sale. I mean, we've looked at different jurisdictions. We've looked at provinces like British Columbia, where they expanded a number of independent outlets years ago, about 600 of those. The government there does mystery shop programs where they send in minors to see if they can buy alcohol. 28% of the time in those independent stores, they were served alcohol to a minor. 4 times the rate than in the government store.
Hold that thought for a second. You do have to deal with that issue. You know
Sure,
that,
I'll
right?
gladly to talk
Can
to
you
that.
give us confidence
Sure.
that wouldn't happen?
Okay, first off, we are under the guise or the oversight of the Alcohol and Gaming Commission. Therefore, under gaming, every store is registered and is tested by the Alcohol and Gaming Commission. Unlike the beer store, they're self-regulated. We also
Stephen,
have...
that's incorrect.
Anyhow, so we also have 36 health units that age test convenience stores 4 times a year for selling tobacco. We just finished the mystery shop program. The results are out. We passed at 94.6%.
We meaning who?
Our association hired an outside organization. At the same time, we haven't seen any numbers from the beer stores here in Ontario. They have never shared openly. I know they want to talk about British Columbia, the fail rate. I would actually like them, Jeff, to put some numbers on the table. Our last record, and about 4 years ago, said the beer stores failed at about 18% in Ontario. So it'd be nice to hear where they come from.
Go ahead.
Stephen, we have a very successful system of responsible sale and service, right? All our staff, before they sell the first case of beer, go through rigorous responsible sale training, both on how to not sell to minors or to intoxicated individuals.
Is he right, though, that 18% got through?
I haven't seen his study, right? What I do know...
Published over and over. He's never responded to it.
What I do know is I have seen studies from independent bodies. I have seen studies from the Center for Addiction and Mental Health that looks at tobacco sales to high school students and to alcohol sales. They found that 16% of the time students were able to buy tobacco at a convenience store versus 1.2% reporting that they could buy beer at the beer store.
Okay, what about
That's an
Martin's,
independent
what
study.
about Martin's notion that you guys already do this in Quebec? Why don't you do it in Ontario?
They do it all through North America. 110,000
Okay,
convenience
but we're
stores sell
just-
beer in the United States.
We're just neighbors with Quebec. That's why I ask about Quebec.
We don't have a beer store system in Quebec today. We have a beer store system here in Ontario. We think that system is incredibly effective. It's open to every brewer, as I said. It delivers consumers incredibly good price, and it provides responsible sale through a highly trained workforce of 7,000 employees. It's got one of the world's best recycling programs that diverts more than half of the weight of the entire blue box. If you go from that system to a convenience store system, you're going to lose a lot of those benefits. You're going to see higher prices, and the evidence from other jurisdictions proved that.
Martin?
Remember, we're not talking about a convenience store system. Look, Rosanna's not at the table here. She's on Skype, but
I would love to say something.
But I'll speak for you.
Right after Martin.
I'll speak for you. You have every right, Rosanna, to argue your case about health and social concerns. I may not agree with your practical solutions because personally, I would favor prohibition, but I don't think that's going to work. My second choice, yeah, exactly. We tried it. My second choice would be nationalization. I don't think that would work. My third choice is, let's be real. Let's not allow a private company to be in charge of safeguarding us. For Jeff to be presenting himself here as a disinterested party, trying to safeguard our youth, just doesn't make sense. He's a vested interest. I don't fault him. I fault the government for allowing the beer store to do this. It's the government that has given rise to the beer store. It's the government that has failed to make things right. And it wouldn't take much. All you have to do is they don't have to nuke the beer store. They don't have to get rid of it. They just have to allow other people to compete on a retail basis, not price, but in terms of the retail experience. So to try to create these straw men of convenience stores or these small little dilapidated gas stores is taking us down it's a diversion.
Okay, let me get Rosanna
Let me just
in
quickly
here.
say, the beer store is harping on the age question in its advertising and today because it's all they've got left. It's by a process of elimination, that's their best card.
Dr. Pelletsari, you wanted to say.
Yeah, so first of all, I don't drink beer, so I'm going to stay out of this debate about the beer store. But I did want to say a couple of things. Quebec has alcohol for sale in convenience stores and grocery stores, and Quebec and Alberta share the honor of having the highest per capita consumption rates for alcohol in Canada. Ontario is much, much below that. So again, just to get back to my point about, you want to liberalize access, we're going to pay the price in increased consumption and increased harms. But we here in Peterborough, the gentleman was correct. We enforce the Smoke-Free Ontario Act. So we're actually going into convenience stores to check on how well they're doing. And what my inspectors are telling me is that, well, first of all, we took tobacco out of convenience stores because we wanted to denormalize it. Like, we didn't want children going in buying gum and candy to think that, it's normal to want to buy cigarettes. And similarly with alcohol, do we really want to give that message to children who are going to the corner store to pick up some gum or a loaf of bread for mom and dad? And we also know that, more access equals more sales equals more access. So if you've got it for sale in more places, that is marketing. That's going to increase your marketing of alcohol. But finally, I just want to say, when we spoke to our convenience store owners, a lot of them don't want alcohol. I mean, they're afraid. They are afraid of the increased crime, of having to deal with intoxicated customers who come in and threaten violence. They're worried about their safety and their security. And they feel it's a lot more responsibility, and they're right, for very little pay. So I just don't want listeners, to believe that all convenience stores owners are on this bandwagon. Here in Peterborough, we're hearing differently. We're hearing many owners saying they don't want to sell alcohol.
Okay, gotcha. Sheldon, can I play this clip now? Or I guess I'm asking, can you play this clip now? Here's an Ontario Beer Facts. Many of you have seen this, some of you who haven't. Roll tape.
Of course they're good kids, but they are still kids. So what if we made it easier to get alcohol?
Hey, boys. Yo. Whoa, look at this now. 54. Got everything. Oh, yeah. There you go, boys. Have fun tonight, boys. Oh, you're welcome.
Alcohol in convenience stores? It's just not right for our kids. Learn more at ontariobeerfacts.ca.
Okay, Dave, what'd you think of that one?
Well, first off, the convenience sector, and by the way, the lady from CAMH or from the health unit, I appreciate it. Yes, a lot of convenience stores do not want to sell beer, and we agree with that. Whether
for the reasons she
religious reasons come in as well, but there is a level that's very competent and has done it throughout Quebec as well. But that commercial, I mean, let's be honest, we don't have the millions of dollars to come back and say anything, nor would we. We've taken the high road. I think Jeff has to answer why would he do that to the small business sector here in Ontario when he has 6,000 C-stores in Quebec that sell beer, so he must be planning on removing the beer from the Quebec store and the other private operators across this country. Otherwise, you shouldn't demean small business in the province of Ontario as he has.
That's a pretty provocative ad, you'd agree?
Yes, but it's an important ad, and this is because this is an important decision. And this is why we feel it was important to have a discussion and have Ontarians consider the consequences of rapidly expanding and significantly expanding the number of points of sale for alcohol. And it's factual. I mean, we've heard from the medical officer of health. She's raised some of these issues. I've alluded to statistics out of BC. New York State, similar situation. You've got alcohol sold in convenience stores and grocery stores in New York State. They do mystery shops of those stores. They did one in October last year. 30% of the time, minors were able to purchase in those jurisdictions.
Okay. Can I ask you a follow-up?
What we need is your numbers, not everybody else's numbers. If the beer store is passing at 100%, you should say it, but you shouldn't sit here and demean small businesses throughout this country to try and win a battle that obviously you might be losing. So I think it's time that you put some numbers on the table. We're very transparent. We expect the beer stores to be.
Stephen, we put more numbers on the table.
We test 60 million people a year. How many do you test?
We put more numbers on the table, Stephen, on this debate over the course of the last year than anybody. Our system challenges 3.6 million people every year. 111,000 are refused service. As I said, all our staff are trained and they're retrained.
Okay, can I ask you, this is a neutral, open-ended question. Is part of the reason you want to maintain the either monopoly or duopoly, as Brother Khan over there calls it, is because you make a profit selling the stuff?
No, Stephen, the rationale for the brewers to want to maintain the beer store is due to its efficiencies, right? It's a very low-cost system that enables brewers to sell and make reasonable profits, in the face of a very, very high tax rate. 44% of the price is taxed in this province. If you go to a different system, if you go to the convenience store, grocery store model that is being proposed here,
you'll lose that profitability.
You will lose the efficiencies of the system, right? And those inefficiencies and added costs will flow through and end up with higher prices for consumers. And as beer companies, we're not interested in seeing that. I mean, the only way you're going to be able to handle those additional costs is if the government would be prepared to cut the tax rate. And we know that that's not the case. In Quebec, the tax is less than half what it is here, and that's why people often talk about, well, I saw a cheaper beer in Quebec. Well, their taxes are less than half what they are here.
Let me get Martin on this. In the past few months, I think, the Liberal government of Ontario, in its wisdom, decided to liberalize sales somewhat, right? They're going to do a few pilot programs, opening it up a little bit. You happy with that?
Yeah, but let's be clear. That's for these are small kiosks or 2,000 square foot kiosks in supermarkets to make wine more convenient, and the beer would be a small component of that. Just to go back to Jeff's point, though, about efficiency. There's nothing wrong with that efficiency if you live in North Korea. But even in communist China, they've gotten rid of this idea that one supplier will deliver the best service to the entire country. Competition, not necessarily in price, but in the retail experience is the way to go. Not with convenience stores alone, but with everybody.
Okay, Jeff, what about the craft brewer situation? Again, we've been receiving lots of emails from them. Is your distribution system too unfair to the craft brewers?
No, we don't think so. Matter of fact, we think it's quite supportive of them. As I mentioned, any brewer can get into our system and put their products, how many they want, and whatever package sizes they want, into as many stores that they want. If they want to be in 5 as a small brewer, they can. If they want to be in 450, they can. The result of that openness is that today we have 100 brewers selling in our system, and they sell 400 brands in our system, and more than 20% of those are Ontario craft brewer brands.
I only got a minute left here. I wish I had more time, but Flying Monkeys say it's costing them more than 25 grand to try to get access to your stores, and that's why they don't do it very much, because it's too much for a small brewer.
Flying Monkeys is one of the most successful brewers in our system, right?
They'd be welcome in our stores.
They'd be welcome in your
Very
stores.
welcome.
How much would you charge them?
There would not be no $25,000, not in small business. And what we do best is in small communities, if there's a small brewer, we would work with that small brewer to make sure their products are on the shelves. Should, in fact, down the road, we grant that right.
Okay. That's our time, everybody. Thanks a lot for your contribution, and chin chin for this holiday weekend coming up. Rosanna Pellizzari, good to have you on the line from Peterborough, and to our three guests here in studio. Thanks so much.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.